Hey everybody, Sayre at Nova Motorcycles again. This week we are talking about cylinder heads and more specifically rebuilding a cylinder head or two. What we have on my bench is the remnants of two head jobs, both Triumphs, one of 500. This is a 750, actually the 750 Tiger from a few weeks ago. And when we say valve job, that's a term, a lot of people throw it around and say, oh, I need a valve job. When what they mean is they need their valves adjusted. That's not what we're talking about here. Valve adjustment is a very simple procedure. It takes 30 minutes on a Brit bike, not a big deal. This is cylinder head rebuild. And basically, we do all aspects of it in-house except for the valve seats. We're not doing valve seat replacement in-house here. But what we are doing is replacing the valve guides. Now, the guides are these beautiful bronze things. We'll show them from the combustion chamber side or from the top side. And they are the guides that, this is not quite done. We'll hope we have enough clearance here. Yeah, they hold the valve as it moves in and out, lets the fuel in, lets the exhaust out. And they have to be basically, when they wear out, the valve starts to slot, to move around, to wobble, and you get imperfect sealing, you get a lot of oil burning, stuff like that. These old Brit stuff and the old American stuff and just older air-cooled motors in general didn't use valve guide seals, so the only seal is the small amount of clearance between the stem and the guide. So what we do is we take the old head and we heat it up to about 200 degrees. I used a toaster oven for this one. And then you take a really complicated fine tool called a punch, and you literally insert these in here. And if the head is up to temp, you hit it. Brass hammer is ideal. Knock it out, and it should come out relatively quickly.
Brass hammer
Yeah, you can't have too many brass hammers.
Thor action.
And for those who aren't familiar, the reason to use a brass hammer or sometimes a leaded hammer, soft metal hammer, is that it doesn't shock as much. If you use a really hard hammer like our traditional, claw hammers or whatever, peen hammers, they can put too much of a shock through the metal and it can crack stuff. It's brittle. It causes damage. So this transfers a lot of force, but it deadens it a little bit. Sort of like getting hit in the face with a beanbag versus a 2x4. So step one is you knock out the old guides and then clean up the hole that it goes into, and then you just put it back in exactly the way it came out, making sure that it's hot, making sure that the hole is not too damaged, oversized, assuming everything is good. You knock it right back in the same way it came out. Step two there, or step three, or 2A, is to size it. Once you put this in, it actually shrinks a little bit because it gets squeezed into the head. So if you try to stick the valve through it, it won't fit. So you resize it. I have right here a little ream. And this is not stuff you want to try at home unless you're very brave or have done this before. So I'm showing you just the basics of the procedure, but this isn't stuff you're going to do on a Saturday afternoon typically. But we measure the guide using a micrometer, definitely not a ruler and not even a caliper. This goes down to the half a thou measurement. So you measure where you're going for. You can measure the guide with, this is a ball gauge. This goes into the hole, and you measure that with this, and it tells you how big your hole is. So we just keep reaming it out with this guy. This is an adjustable reamer. You take off a little bit at a time. You're really taking off like a half a thou at a time, taking it out to your final clearance. Your final clearance depends on the valve you're using. These are replacement, but they're basically standard spec. So I'm using a Triumph spec, which is about 2 thou in the intake, 3 thou in the exhaust. With more modern materials, you can get away with a lot less than that. And the less clearance you have, the more horsepower you get to keep. There's less leakage, less wobble, all that stuff. So you're starting off in a better position. But better safe than sorry. If you go too tight on an old valve, an old style valve, it can stick, and then your fresh rebuild is over with. So that's the basics of getting it in there. Now, once you do that, you have to recut the valve seat. The valve seat, obviously, it sounds just like where it sits, where the valve head sits. The sealing surface is a 45-degree angle. And on the seat, it's right there. And on the edge of the valve, it's right there. You need to make sure that they are concentric. Now, the old, for whatever reason, the new guide and the old guide may be just a few, fractions of a degree off as where they end up sitting. So you have to recut this seat so it's concentric, which means it's right in the center of the hole that the guide has. To do that, we have a handy-dandy New-Way valve cutter. These are awesome do-it-yourselfer tools. I mean, all this stuff can be done by modern machines that are way precise and cost $300,000 and stuff. But for this level of work, these are fantastic and better than what they were using at the factory back in the day. This is a multi-angle cutter, which means it gives you a 45-degree option here, a 31-degree option there. We have a 60-degree option here, and they even have different blades you put on here that can radius it into the head, so you can blend the seat right into the head. Without getting way into the weeds on this stuff, the concept of a multi-angle valve seat, this 45 is your sealing surface. This one is actually basically a one-angle valve seat. You have a 45-degree angle. You can call it, then you have the cylinder head surface, and that's it. A multi-angle will put a 60-degree, and then the 45, and then the 31. The idea being to progressively get less and less, so there's fewer sharp angles, so the fuel, the gases, will flow better. Basically, they don't get hung up on sharp corners, which they do. And when you really get into it, I think now the modern machine cutters are doing 5-angle valve jobs. And if you really get into high-end handmade cylinder head work, you can do a basically endless valve job where it's no angles at all other than the seat, and you just have a beautiful radius curve leading up to it, beautiful radius curve leading away into the cylinder head. That gets into flow theory and cylinder head design. It's awesome stuff, but it's a bit more than what we're going to talk about today. By getting back to it, we really need to make sure that we don't just throw in the seat and call it good. We have to check that it's concentric. We cut it till it fits right. I try to put a few, like if I can get another angle on here, I will, just because it's going to flow better. These old seats, you often can't. And in old stuff, you really want to make sure you preserve as much of the material as possible rather than try to make it perfect like it was new, because again, it's not. It wasn't designed to be that way, and you're not going to get there. Once that's all done, you reassemble it, new springs, and goes back on the bike, and you have a cylinder head. So this is stuff we do. Like I said, I'm doing 2 of these today. We do it in-house. It's really kind of fun. It's definitely stuff you can figure out how to do on your own. Don't attempt it without proper tools, investing in tools, and really taking the time to know what you're doing. Otherwise, you're going to have a costly mistake, and you'll have to come see us anyway. Stay tuned for more. These ones will be running before too long, and you get to see that too. As usual, please like and subscribe, and thanks.